So what we're going to look at is if I give you any quadratic equation, I can give you a formula to get the answers or the solutions to that equation without any work at all. It's sort of a magical type of thing. Typically formulas are a bit magical, right? You don't know where they came from, you just know how to plug things into them. So that's all this is. There's no mathematics really behind it that you have to know in order to use it. And for that reason, I prefer not to use this formula very frequently. So in general, if you have a quadratic equation, you can always write it in this form. Every quadratic equation has an x squared term. So this a is whatever number's in front of your x squared, and it could be 1, because if you just have x squared, there's a 1 in the front. Now, you don't have to have an x term, but you can, and if you can, the number in front of x is b, what we call b. If there is no x term, then you just think of it as 0x, so b would be 0. Finally, you have a constant term, no x in this term, and you don't have to have a constant, but you can. If you do, it's c, and if you don't, then c is just 0. Okay, so every quadratic equation could be written in this form where all the terms are on the left side and you have 0 on the right side. So if you have that, we're going to look at how to get an equation for what the variable x equals, right? We're going to get this formula here, and this formula is actually called the quadratic formula. We're going to see where it comes from, because this is a formula for solutions to any quadratic equation, which first has to be written in this form. So the way we're going to solve this generic equation that doesn't have any numbers in it is by completing the square on these x terms. So if I want to do that, the first thing I would like to do is get a 1 in front of my x squared, and the way to do that is to divide by a. Now I have to keep the equation balanced, so I must do that on the right side as well. So I end up with x squared plus b over a x plus c over a equals 0. Then I will isolate my x terms so I can complete the square. So I'll subtract my constant c over a. So I'll have to add something to the x terms to make it a perfect square trinomial. So I'll start to factor it here to see what it's going to be that I have to add. To get x squared, I need x and x. And to get b over a, I need each of these to be half of b over a, which is b over 2a. And so to get this guy, I multiply b over 2a by b over 2a, which gives me b squared over 4a squared. So that's what I have to add to both sides. So on the right side, I have b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. And I can combine those with a common denominator of 4a squared. So here I'd have to multiply the top and the bottom by 4a to give me 4a squared on bottom. So I end up with b squared minus 4ac all over the common denominator of 4a squared. On the left side, I'll write this as x plus b over 2a squared so that I can then take the square root of it. And I have to take the positive and negative square root of the right-hand side. Now, the square root on the right-hand side, I can split. I can take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. So the square root of the top is the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And the square root of 4a squared is just 2a. Finally, I'll subtract my b over 2a to get x by itself. Remember, that's what we're trying to do, is solve for x. And these have a common denominator, so I can put this whole thing together over 2a. So I'll have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac on top. All over the common denominator of 2a. And this is the formula for what x equals. So let me just put that up here. So if your quadratic equation is in this form, then all you have to do is plug in your A value, where you see an A, your B value, where you see a B, and finally your C value, where you have a C. Sorry, I missed an A down here. Now, notice that A is a number, B is a number, and C is a number. So the things you plug in on the right side of this don't have any X's, okay? You just plug in the numbers that are in front of these. And you have the solutions to this quadratic equation. So the way to get the quadratic formula is by completing the square. So my recommendation in general is to really know how to complete the square, because that's all we did here. If you can complete the square, then you can solve any quadratic equation. You do not have to memorize this magical formula. Although there are occasions where this formula is quicker, but it doesn't show understanding of solving quadratic equations. It shows that you can memorize a formula. So that's useful sometimes, but in general I prefer personally to be able to do the work, to be able to solve something using logical steps as opposed to solving something with a template that I've memorized. Take that for what it's worth and have fun.